The stars hung like scattered diamonds against the black void as Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty. His weathered hands gripped the metal railing as he watched the massive alien ships approach through the viewport. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. First contact with the Zephyrian Galactic Empire was about to begin. Captain Lisa Bennett walked up beside him and checked her datapad. The alien fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with polished metal that caught the light from nearby stars. Elegant curves and sweeping lines made them look more like works of art than military ships. "They're requesting permission to board," Bennett said quietly. Her voice carried the tension everyone on the bridge felt. "Standard diplomatic protocols?" Morrison nodded and straightened his uniform. He had been chosen for this mission because of his experience and his ability to stay calm under pressure. The brass back on Earth had made it clear that first impressions would matter. They just had not told him exactly what kind of impression humanity wanted to make. The docking bay filled with a soft blue light as the alien shuttle touched down. Morrison and his diplomatic team waited in the main conference room. Ambassador Carl Peterson sat at the head of the polished table, his briefcase full of documents that might never be needed. 2 Marine guards stood at attention near the door, their weapons holstered but ready. The Zephyrians entered the room with the confidence of a species that had conquered half the galaxy. High Commander Vexstar led the group, his tall frame covered in ornate robes that sparkled with embedded crystals. His pale blue skin and large dark eyes gave him an otherworldly beauty that made the humans seem crude by comparison. "Greetings, primitive ones," Vexstar said in perfect English. His translator device had clearly studied human communications for some time. "I am High Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. You have been selected for the honor of joining our great civilization." Peterson leaned back in his chair and smiled politely. "Welcome aboard the USS Liberty. I'm Ambassador Carl Peterson, representing the United Earth Defense Council. We're pleased to meet with representatives of your empire." Vexstar gestured to one of his subordinates, who activated a holographic display above the table. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of local space with hundreds of star systems marked in blue. Red markers indicated human colonies and outposts, looking tiny compared to the vast blue territory. "As you can see," Vexstar continued, "your species occupies a small cluster of systems on the edge of civilized space. The Zephyrian Empire has brought peace and order to over 300 species across 12,000 star systems. We offer you the same opportunity." The hologram shifted to show images of various alien worlds. Beautiful cities reached toward the sky, surrounded by green fields and peaceful settlements. Alien beings of different shapes and sizes worked together in harmony. It looked like paradise. "The terms are simple," another Zephyrian spoke up. This one wore military insignia that marked him as some kind of general. "You will acknowledge Emperor Taishan as your rightful ruler. Your military forces will be disbanded and replaced with imperial peacekeepers. You will pay tribute of 20% of your total production annually. In return, you will receive protection from hostile forces and access to imperial technology." Morrison watched Peterson's reaction carefully. The ambassador's face remained neutral, but his fingers drummed silently on the table. They had expected something like this. Every intelligence report suggested that the Zephyrians operated as a protection racket on a galactic scale. "Those are interesting terms," Peterson said slowly. "However, I'm afraid humanity must respectfully decline your offer." The silence that followed was so complete that the hum of the ship's engines seemed loud. The Zephyrians looked at each other with expressions of confusion and disbelief. Vexstar's large eyes blinked several times as if he had not heard correctly. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding," Vexstar said carefully. "This is not a negotiation. This is a formal notification of your incorporation into the Empire. Refusal is not an option that has been presented to you." Peterson opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "I have here the official response from the United Earth Defense Council." Humanity appreciates your offer but chooses to remain an independent species. We're willing to discuss trade agreements and peaceful coexistence, but we will not submit to imperial rule. The Zephyrian general leaned forward, his voice taking on a threatening tone. You do not seem to understand your position. Your 12 colonies and handful of ships cannot stand against the might of the Empire. We have conquered species with far greater military power than yours. Morrison stepped forward for the first time. His voice was calm and steady, but there was something in his eyes that made the aliens shift uncomfortably. General, humanity has been at war with itself for over 5,000 years. We've fought with sticks and stones, swords and spears, guns and bombs, and nuclear weapons that could turn entire planets to glass. We've killed more of our own kind than all your conquered species combined. He walked around the table until he stood directly across from Vexstar. We brought that experience with us when we reached the stars. Every human ship is designed for war. Every colony is fortified. Every citizen knows how to fight. You're not dealing with a peaceful species that stumbled into space travel. You're dealing with predators who learned to build starships. Vexstar's confident expression began to crack. You would dare threaten the Zephyrian Empire? Our fleets number in the thousands. Our armies have never known defeat. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're not threatening anyone. We're simply declining your offer and suggesting you leave our space peacefully, but if you choose to press the matter— He gestured toward the viewport where the alien ships floated in formation. Well, let's just say humanity has been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. Captain Bennett stepped forward and handed Morrison a datapad. He glanced at it and nodded. High Commander, our sensors indicate that your ships are equipped with energy weapons, particle beams, and defensive shields. Very impressive technology. However, I should mention that every human vessel in this system is currently targeting your fleet with nuclear warheads. We find that kinetic weapons tend to be more reliable than energy systems. The color drained from Vexstar's blue skin. You're bluffing. No civilized species would resort to such primitive weapons in space combat. You're right, Morrison agreed. No civilized species would. But then again, nobody has ever accused humanity of being civilized. The Zephyrian delegation left the USS Liberty in stunned silence 20 minutes later. Their elegant shuttle disappeared into the depths of space, leaving the human fleet alone among the stars. Morrison watched them go and wondered if he had just prevented a war or started one. High Commander Vexstar's shuttle docked with the Imperial flagship 3 hours after leaving the human vessel. His hands shook as he walked through the corridors toward the communication center. Never in his 200 years of service had he encountered a species that spoke to the Empire with such casual disrespect. General Callith waited in the briefing room with a dozen other officers. The general's scarred face showed the experience of countless battles across the galaxy. He had personally overseen the conquest of 47 different species, and each one had followed the same pattern. Initial resistance, brief conflict, then grateful acceptance of imperial rule. Report, Khalid commanded as Vexstar entered the room. They refused, Vexstar said quietly. Complete refusal. No negotiation, no compromise. They simply said no and suggested we leave their space. The room fell silent. Several officers exchanged glances of disbelief. In the 3,000-year history of the Zephyrian Empire, only 6 species had ever refused the initial offer of membership. 5 of those had been destroyed within a single solar cycle. The 6th had become the Empire's most feared enemy before finally being crushed. After decades of brutal warfare. Impossible, muttered Commander Zeshra. The intelligence reports show they have only 12 colonies and perhaps 300 ships. They cannot seriously believe they can stand against us. Vexstar activated the recording device built into his ceremonial robes. The conversation with the humans played back exactly as it had happened. When Admiral Morrison mentioned targeting the Zephyrian fleet with nuclear weapons, several officers gasped in horror. Barbaric, General Khalid whispered. They actually threatened to use atomic weapons in space combat. Meanwhile, on a small moon orbiting the gas giant Kepler 442b, Commander Mary Collins adjusted her communications array and prepared to send her daily report to Earth. For 8 months, she had lived among the Zephyrians as a cultural exchange student. Her forged identity documents identified her as a member of the Altarian species, peaceful traders who had joined the Empire 50 years earlier, the Zephyrians. Never suspected that humans had been infiltrating their space for over 2 years. Collins spoke perfect Zephyrian and had undergone surgery to alter her appearance. Blue contact lenses hid her human eyes, while synthetic skin gave her the pale coloration of an Altarian female. Her real mission was intelligence gathering on a scale the Empire could never imagine. Every ship movement, every military installation, every supply route had been carefully mapped and recorded. The data she collected went directly to Earth's Strategic Planning Division, where analysts built detailed models of Zephyrian military capabilities. Collins typed her coded message quickly. The diplomatic meeting had failed as expected. Human leaders had always known that peaceful coexistence was unlikely. The Zephyrians viewed any independent species as a threat to their authority. War was inevitable, her message traveled through carefully hidden relay stations scattered across Imperial space. Other human operatives, disguised as members of various client species, had spent months building this communication network. The Empire's own technology carried intelligence reports that would help destroy it. 3 star systems away, Scout Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded a small fleet of reconnaissance ships hidden in the asteroid field around. Wolf 359, his vessels, looked like standard mining equipment, complete with fake transponder codes and forged work permits. The Zephyrians paid little attention to the endless streams of cargo haulers and industrial ships that moved through their space. Rodriguez studied the holographic display showing Zephyrian fleet positions throughout the sector. His teams had been tracking Imperial ship movements for months, identifying patterns and weaknesses in their defensive strategies. The aliens deployed their forces according to ancient traditions that prioritized ceremony over tactical effectiveness. Send the update to Admiral Morrison, Rodriguez told his communications officer. Zephyrian Third Fleet is conducting training exercises in the Vega system. 17 battleships, 43 cruisers, and over 200 support vessels. They're completely unaware of our observation posts. The data packet compressed years of preparation into a few terabytes of information. Human scouts had mapped every major Zephyrian military base within 50 light-years of Earth. They knew which systems contained shipyards, which planets housed training facilities, and which trade routes carried critical supplies. Back on Nexus Prime, the Imperial capital world, Emperor Taishan received General Calith's report with growing alarm. The ancient ruler had governed the Empire for over 8 centuries, guiding its expansion from a single world to a galactic superpower. He had seen many species rise and fall, but something about these humans disturbed him deeply. "Show me their military records," the Emperor commanded. The holographic display filled with images from human history. Battlefields covered with bodies. Cities reduced to rubble, weapons of incredible destructive power. The Zephyrian analysts had studied human conflicts going back thousands of years, and the pattern was always the same. Humans fought with a brutality and determination that shocked even hardened military officers. "They have never known true peace," reported Intelligence Director Quindle. Even during their longest periods of stability, humans continued developing new weapons and military strategies. Their entire civilization is built around the concept of warfare. Emperor Taishan studied footage of human soldiers in combat. They moved with efficiency and precision that came from centuries of practice. Unlike most species, humans seemed to actually enjoy fighting. They treated battle as both art and science, constantly improving their methods of killing. "What is their population?" the Emperor asked. "Approximately 8 billion across 12 worlds," Quindle replied. "However, our analysis suggests that every adult human has received some form of military training. They do not maintain separate civilian and military populations like civilized species." The Emperor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the palace's climate control. 8 billion soldiers scattered across 12 fortified worlds, backed by a space fleet designed specifically for warfare. The humans had not stumbled into space travel like most species. They had militarized their expansion from the very beginning. There is something else, General Khaled H. added reluctantly. Our border sensors have detected unusual activity in human space over the past week. Ship movements, communication bursts, energy signatures consistent with fleet mobilization. They are preparing for war, the Emperor said quietly. It appears so, Your Majesty. The question is whether we should strike first before they complete their preparations. Emperor Taishan stared at the tactical displays showing the positions of Imperial fleets throughout the galaxy. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, the combined might of 300 conquered species. Surely it would be enough to crush these upstart humans before they became a real threat. But as he looked at the images of human warfare, the Emperor felt something he had not experienced in 800 years of rule. For the first time since ascending to the throne, Taishan wondered if the Zephyrian Empire might have finally encountered an enemy it could not defeat. The secure communication reached Admiral Morrison exactly 18 hours after the Zephyrian delegation departed. The message came directly from Earth's United Defense Council with authorization codes that made his blood run cold. Operation Starfall was approved. Humanity's entire military machine would mobilize within 72 hours. Morrison walked through the corridors of the USS Liberty toward the Fleet Command Center. Officers and crew members he passed could sense the change in atmosphere. Word had already spread that something big was happening. The relaxed attitude of a diplomatic mission was rapidly being replaced by the focused intensity of a military operation. Fleet Coordinator Nancy Phillips waited in the command center surrounded by holographic displays showing ship positions across human space. Her fingers moved quickly across multiple control panels as she coordinated the largest military movement in human history. Every available vessel was being recalled from patrol duties, training exercises, and colony defense assignments. Status report, Morrison said as he entered the room. First wave mobilization is ahead of schedule, Phillips replied without looking up from her displays. Admiral Chun's Third Fleet is already moving from the Tau Ceti system. Admiral Rodriguez is bringing the Fifth Fleet from Alpha Centauri. We should have over 400 ships assembled within 6 days. Morrison studied the tactical display showing human fleet movements. Unlike the Zephyrians, humanity did not keep their military forces concentrated in a few large formations. Human ships were scattered throughout their territory in small groups, each one capable of independent operation. This made them harder to track and nearly impossible to destroy in a single decisive battle. The USS Constitution led the first battle group toward the rendezvous point near Proxima Centauri. Commander Rick Taylor stood on the bridge of the massive battleship and watched smaller vessels joining his formation. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and support ships moved into precise formations that had been practiced countless times during war games. Human military doctrine emphasized flexibility and redundancy. Every ship could operate independently if needed, but they fought most effectively as coordinated units. Each battle group contained a mix of vessel types designed to handle any tactical situation. Heavy battleships provided firepower, fast cruisers served as scouts and raiders, while destroyers specialized in close combat and missile defense. How many ships total? Taylor asked his tactical officer. Current count shows 843 vessels converging on the assembly area. Lieutenant Commander Susan Hayes replied. That includes everything from battleships down to patrol. Boats, marine transports are being loaded at every major base. The USS Independence approached from the opposite direction, leading the second battle group under Captain Helen Carter. Her ships had been conducting training exercises near the edge of human space when the mobilization order arrived. Unlike the first battle group's mix of newer vessels, Carter commanded mostly older ships with battle-scarred hulls that told stories of previous conflicts. Carter preferred the older designs because they had been tested in actual combat. Humanities Expansion into space had not been peaceful. Pirates, hostile alien encounters, and territorial disputes had provided plenty of opportunities to refine ship designs and tactical procedures. Every human vessel incorporated lessons learned from real battles rather than theoretical scenarios. Marine General Paul Thompson supervised the loading of ground forces at the main military base on Luna. His troops represented the best of humanity's warrior tradition, trained for combat in any environment from vacuum to heavy gravity worlds. Each Marine wore powered armor that doubled their strength and speed while providing protection against energy weapons and radiation. "General, the Zephyrians have never faced ground combat like this," Colonel Janet Murphy said as she watched. Platoons of Marines boarding transport ships. Their conquered species surrendered after losing space battles. "They have no experience with planetary assault," Thompson nodded grimly. Human military planners had studied every available record of Zephyrian conquests. The Empire's standard strategy involved overwhelming space superiority followed by negotiated surrender. They rarely needed to fight on planetary surfaces because most species gave up once their fleets were destroyed. "That's their weakness," Thompson replied. "They think controlling space means controlling the war. Humans know better. You don't win a war until you control the ground." News of the mobilization spread throughout human space despite attempts to maintain secrecy. Civilian populations watched military convoys moving through their systems and knew something major was about to happen. Unlike the client species of the Zephyrian Empire, human civilians supported their military completely. Every colonist understood that independence required constant vigilance. On the industrial world of New Detroit, factory workers put in double shifts to produce ammunition and spare parts for the fleet. The civilian economy seamlessly shifted into wartime production mode, something that would have been impossible for most species. Humans had maintained their industrial base specifically for situations like this, Director Kate Wilson coordinated supply shipments from her headquarters in the asteroid belt. Massive cargo haulers loaded with food, fuel, and military equipment joined the growing fleet formation. Human logistics capabilities were as impressive as their combat ships. They could sustain military operations across interstellar distances for months, or even years if necessary. The scale of human preparation became clear as ship after ship arrived at the assembly point. This was not a hastily organized response to the Zephyrian ultimatum. This was the culmination of decades of careful planning and preparation. Humanity had always known this day would come. Admiral Morrison transferred his flag to the USS Washington, a massive command ship designed specifically for coordinating large fleet operations. The ship's computer systems could track thousands of vessels simultaneously while providing real-time tactical analysis to field commanders. No other species had developed such sophisticated command and control capabilities. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from our intelligence network," Communications Officer Lieutenant Brad Foster reported. "Commander Collins confirms that Zephyrian forces are still conducting routine operations. They appear to have no idea what's coming." Morrison smiled coldly as he studied the enemy positions displayed on the main screen. The Zephyrians had made a critical error by underestimating human capabilities. They saw a small species with limited territory and assumed military weakness. They had no concept of how efficiently humans could project force across interstellar distances. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Morrison ordered. "Operation Starfall begins in 72 hours. We're going to show the Zephyrian Empire why humanity earned its reputation as the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The massive human battle fleet continued to grow as more ships arrived from across human space. 800 vessels became 900, then past 1,000. Each ship carried crews trained for one purpose: destroying enemy forces with maximum efficiency and minimum mercy. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that some species should never be threatened with conquest. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a swarm of metal predators emerging from the darkness. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Washington and watched as over 1,000 ships materialized in perfect formation. The sight would have been beautiful if not for the deadly purpose behind it. Zephyrian Admiral Quinder commanded the Imperial Defense Flotilla from his flagship, the Eternal Glory. His fleet consisted of 47 vessels, positioned around the system's main jump point. Standard Imperial doctrine called for meeting enemy forces at the edge of a system and engaging them in formal battle. Ona demanded that both sides announce their intentions before fighting began. Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Quinder of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy, he broadcast on all frequencies. You have entered Imperial space without authorization. State your intentions and prepare for inspection. The human response came not through communication channels but through action. Lieutenant Kevin Walsh led a squadron of 20 fighters in a high-speed attack run against the Zephyrian flagship. The small craft moved faster than anything the aliens had ever encountered, weaving through defensive fire with precision that seemed impossible. Walsh's fighters carried nuclear-tipped missiles designed specifically for space combat. Unlike the energy weapons favored by most galactic civilizations, human missiles could not be deflected by shields or jammed by electronic countermeasures. They were simple, brutal, and absolutely reliable. Target the command sections, Walsh told his pilots, over the tactical network. Remember, we want to disable their ability to coordinate, not destroy them completely. The first missile struck the Eternal Glory's bridge tower with devastating effect. The nuclear warhead vaporized the entire command section in a flash of artificial sunlight. Admiral Quinder and his senior officers died instantly. Never understanding what had hit them, Commander Tony Garcia's destroyer squadron moved in behind the fighter attack. The USS Phoenix and her sister ships targeted Zephyrian communication arrays with precise railgun fire. Solid metal projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through alien hulls like paper. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet lost all ability to coordinate their defense. Captain Lisa Bennett coordinated the battle from the Washington's command center. Her tactical display showed human ships moving with clockwork precision while Zephyrian vessels struggled to respond to attacks coming from multiple directions simultaneously. The aliens had expected a traditional space battle with formal challenges and honorable single combat. Instead, they faced a carefully orchestrated campaign of destruction. Zephyrian cruiser attempting to break away from the formation, reported. Lieutenant Sandra Miller from the tactical station. Intercept? Let her go, Bennett replied coldly. We want survivors to report what happened here. The human attack followed principles developed through centuries of warfare against their own species. Overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest points. Coordinated strikes to disrupt command and control, and psychological warfare designed to break enemy morale. The Zephyrians had never faced tactics like these. Human ships moved in coordinated Wolf packs, each group targeting specific enemy vessels with multiple simultaneous attacks. The USS Constitution's battle group engaged 3 Zephyrian battleships at once, using superior speed and maneuverability to stay outside the range of alien energy weapons while pounding them with missiles and railgun fire. Commander Rick Taylor watched from the Constitution's bridge as Zephyrian return fire splashed harmlessly against his ship's armor. Human vessels were built like tanks, designed to absorb enormous amounts of damage and keep fighting. Redundant systems and backup power sources meant that even catastrophic hits rarely disabled them completely. Their weapons are impressive but inefficient, Taylor told his crew. Energy beams disperse over distance and can be partially deflected by our armor. They're fighting a gentleman's war while we're fighting to win. The Zephyrian Vice Admiral Teshka tried desperately to organize a counterattack from her heavy CRU Icer. Her remaining ships formed a defensive sphere around the largest vessels, hoping to concentrate their firepower and drive off the human attackers. It was a textbook maneuver that had worked against dozens of other species. Human tacticians had studied that exact formation through months of intelligence gathering. Captain Helen Carter's second battle group split into 3 sections and attacked the Zephyrian defensive sphere from above, below, and directly through its center. The aliens could not target all three attack vectors simultaneously. "Break their formation," Carter ordered over the battle network. "Focus fire on the heavy units. Once the big ships are down, the escorts will surrender." Nuclear warheads detonated throughout the Zephyrian formation like deadly flowers blooming in space. Each explosion sent shockwaves through nearby vessels, damaging systems and killing crew members even when the ships themselves survived. Human weapons were designed to inflict maximum casualties and psychological trauma. The battle lasted exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes. When the firing stopped, 38 Zephyrian vessels had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 9 ships surrendered after their commanders realized continued resistance was hopeless. Human casualties numbered fewer than 200 killed and wounded. Marine General Paul Thompson's assault shuttles approached the surviving Zephyrian vessels to accept their surrender. His troops wore full combat armor and carried weapons designed more for intimidation than practical necessity. The psychological effect on alien survivors was exactly what human planners had intended. "Attention Zephyrian survivors," Thompson broadcast to the defeated fleet. "You are now prisoners of the United Earth Defense Force. Your ships will be impounded and your crews transferred to detention facilities. Any attempt at resistance will result in immediate destruction." Commander Mary Collins monitored Zephyrian communications from her hidden base throughout the battle. Imperial command frequencies carried increasingly desperate messages as news of the defeat spread through nearby systems. Fear and confusion replaced the confidence that had characterized Zephyrian military communications for centuries. "They're calling it impossible," Collins reported to her Earth controllers. "The local commanders are requesting immediate reinforcements and questioning whether their intelligence about human capabilities was accurate." Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays showing the aftermath of humanity's first victory. Disabled Zephyrian ships drifted among the debris of their destroyed companions while human vessels maintained perfect formation. The message was clear. This had not been a battle between equals but a demonstration of superior military capability. "Send a message to the Zephyrian High Command," Morrison ordered. "Tell them that humanity is prepared to discuss terms for their withdrawal from our territory. If they choose to escalate this conflict, they will discover that this was merely a preview of human military capabilities." The surviving Zephyrian cruiser jumped to hyperspace carrying news of the disaster back to Imperial space. The cruise reports would spread terror throughout the Empire as species that had lived under Zephyrian protection for centuries began to question whether their protectors could actually defend them against this new threat from the edge of the galaxy. Emperor Taishan stood before the massive viewing window in his palace throne room, watching emergency shuttles arrive from across the Empire. The ancient ruler had governed for 800 years, but never had he faced a crisis like this one. Reports from the Kepler 442 battle had reached Nexus Prime 12 hours ago, and the Empire was already beginning to fracture. "Supreme General." Vasak entered the throne room with a datapad containing the latest military assessments. His scaled face showed the stress of trying to coordinate defenses against an enemy that fought unlike anything in Imperial experience. 3 more border systems had reported human fleet movements, and panic was spreading faster than his ships could respond. "Your Majesty, we have confirmed losses of 47 vessels at Kepler 442, Vasak reported with barely controlled desperation. Admiral Quinder and his entire command staff were killed in the first minutes of engagement. The humans gave no warning and showed no mercy. Emperor Taishan turned away from the window and walked toward his throne. The golden seat had been occupied by 12 emperors over 3 millennia, each one expanding the empire's borders and adding new species to its domain. Now it seemed that legacy might end during his reign. "How many ships are moving toward our core systems?" the emperor asked. "Intelligence estimates place the human fleet at over 1,000 vessels," Vasak replied. "They appear to be advancing along multiple routes simultaneously. Our forces cannot be in all places at once." The throne room doors opened as urgent messengers arrived with reports from across the Empire. The Altarian Trade Federation had declared independence and was refusing to pay tribute. The Centauri mining colonies had expelled their imperial governors. Even species that had been loyal for centuries were beginning to question whether the Empire could protect them. Captain Julie Morris led the human advance guard toward the critical Altair Proxima system. Her task force consisted of 30 ships, designed for deep space reconnaissance and rapid strike operations. Unlike the massive battle fleet following behind them, Morris commanded vessels built for speed and stealth rather than raw firepower. "Target analysis complete," reported Lieutenant Angela Davis from the tactical station. "Altair Proxima contains 2 major military installations, 1 orbital shipyard, and approximately 40,000 Imperial personnel. Civilian population is estimated at 2 million spread across 3 planets." Morris studied the intelligence data collected by human spies over the past months. The Altair Proxima system served as a major supply hub for Imperial forces throughout this sector. Destroying the military facilities would cripple Zephyrian ability to reinforce their border defenses. "Begin surgical strikes on military targets only," Morris ordered. "Remember, we want to demonstrate precision, not brutality. The goal is to convince other species that humanity can liberate them without causing unnecessary civilian casualties." Human missiles struck the orbital defense platforms with devastating accuracy. Each warhead had been programmed to target specific sections of the installations, destroying weapons and communications equipment while leaving life support systems intact. Imperial personnel could survive and surrender rather than die in pointless heroic gestures. The orbital shipyard presented a more complex target. The massive facility contained dozens of partially completed warships that could strengthen Imperial forces if allowed to reach completion. However, it also housed 50,000 civilian workers from a dozen different species who had been forced to labor for the Empire. Morris made the decision that would define humanity's approach to this war. Target the shipyard's docking arms and construction equipment. Leave the habitation sections intact. We'll give the workers a chance to evacuate before destroying the military components. Commander Mary Collins watched the attack from her hidden observation post on Altair Proxima's largest moon. Imperial communications networks carried increasingly frantic messages as Zephyrian commanders realized they were facing a new kind of warfare. The humans struck with surgical precision that military academies throughout the galaxy had theorized about but never seen implemented. "They're requesting immediate evacuation of all Imperial personnel," Collins reported to Admiral Morrison. "The local commander is offering unconditional surrender in exchange for safe passage for his troops." Morrison's response was transmitted across all Imperial frequencies in the system. "Surrender accepted. Imperial military personnel will be transported to neutral territory and released. Civilian populations are free to remain under human protection or relocate as they choose. Any attempt at sabotage or resistance will result in immediate termination of this agreement." The psychological impact of Morris's precision strikes rippled throughout the Empire faster than the human fleet could advance. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for centuries began to realize that liberation might be possible without the total destruction they had always feared. The humans were offering something the galaxy had never seen: conquest with mercy for those who did not resist. Emperor Taishan received reports of system after system declaring independence as human forces approached. The Vegan Alliance had expelled Imperial governors and was welcoming human diplomatic teams. The Procyon Confederacy had surrendered 3 major military bases without firing a shot. Even some Zephyrian colonies were beginning to question their loyalty to the Empire. "Your Majesty, we must consider negotiation," General Vosak said quietly. "Our military cannot be everywhere at once, and we are losing systems faster than we can reinforce them." The Emperor stood and walked to his ancient throne. For 8 centuries he had believed that the Empire represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization. The idea that a single species from the galaxy's edge could threaten everything his ancestors had built seemed impossible to accept. "What do the humans want?" Taishan asked until Supreme Admiral Keshra entered the throne room, carrying the latest communication from Admiral Morrison. The human fleet commander had transmitted his terms to every Imperial facility throughout the sector. The message was simple and direct in typical human fashion. They demand complete withdrawal of Imperial forces from all disputed territories, Keshra reported. Recognition of human sovereignty over their claimed space. Release of all political prisoners held by the Empire. And payment of reparations for damages caused by Imperial aggression. Emperor Taishan felt the weight of 800 years of rule pressing down on him. Outside the palace walls, crowds of Imperial citizens watched emergency broadcasts showing human ships approaching the capital system. Some carried signs demanding peace negotiations. Others called for resistance to the end. The massive human battle fleet appeared at the edge of the Nexus, prime system like a dark cloud of metal and death. Over 1,000 ships took defensive positions around the Imperial capital world while Admiral Morrison broadcast his final ultimatum to Emperor Taishan. Your Majesty, humanity offers the Zephyrian Empire one final opportunity for peaceful resolution. Withdraw your forces from human space and accept our terms for coexistence. Continue this war and discover why Earth's children learn to build starships. The choice is yours, but our patience has limits. Emperor Taishan looked out at the human fleet surrounding his homeworld, and realized that the age of Zephyrian dominance was ending. The galaxy had produced something the Empire was not equipped to handle, a species that treated warfare as both science and art, wielded overwhelming force with surgical precision, and offered mercy only to those wise enough to surrender before resistance became futile.